All right. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so good morning. Welcome to the second Frederick County Delegation meeting. For those new joining us, we have our meetings every Friday at 9 a.m. I usually do these from my office, but I've contracted some sort of terrible sickness, and so I'm doing it from my hotel. And so if my voice cracks or I cough, that's what that is. Anyways, we have a few items today that we're going to be voting on, and then probably a few items today that we're going to just be discussing, and hopefully we have a productive meeting. So let's go ahead and get into the business. Delegate Simpson, would you like to introduce your bill, HB 492, for the group?
Sure. So this shouldn't be new to anyone. This bill was actually introduced to us several times by the county as one of their priorities. This is just another way for them to do the background checks on staff, to give them an additional way that perhaps a little less expensive, and also would enable them to get some of these results much quicker.
So this just would enable background checks for certain individuals looking to do business within the county. And does this only apply to Frederick County?
Yes, this is a Frederick County only, county employees and volunteers. I mean, I think that this is something that they found from elsewhere, but it's not in the law elsewhere. So,
okay. Are you hoping to make this a delegation bill?
I would, you mean a delegation bill as opposed to the letter of support?
Well, so I see that you've dropped it, so you just at this point just want a letter of support, right?
Yeah, it's either way.
Okay. All right. Any discussion from any of the members? Go ahead, Senator Folden.
Delegate Simpson, who's currently doing their backgrounds? I'm sorry, I don't just want to get a little background on who's currently doing them, how they're being handled. Is it the sheriff's office? Is there a problem with the current process?
My understanding, there's not a problem with the current process other than it is overwhelming to the sheriff's office. And that it's not going to completely take it. It doesn't change all of the way that they're doing the background. It just provides this other, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the fingerprint supported background checks, which is supposed to be a little bit more robust than just just the name. There are different levels of sensitivity. It just provides another way that they can get some of these background checks back actually much quicker when they're not in as sensitive of areas. It does not totally take this out of the sheriff's office.
Perhaps the sheriff's office given, like, Mr. Chairman, does the sheriff's office have a position on this one way or the other?
Tori has her, yes, my understanding is supported, because we've had this discussion during the meetings that we have with the county. So Tori has her hand up.
Victoria Venable, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Victoria from the County Executive's Office. And I also have Kristen from our HR department to answer any other questions. But yes, we currently work with the Sheriff's Office to do the full-blown background checks for positions that warrant it. We do not do that for all of our employees. We only do it for the ones that are either working with vulnerable adults, children, or in security-sensitive positions. So think things like our water and sewer, access to our data, things like that can be vulnerable to nefarious activities. So we want to make sure the people in those positions have been vetted. This would allow us to still work with the sheriff's department, but just for the fingerprints, and not have, we really currently only have the option of either doing no background check whatsoever or the full-blown background check, which, as I'm sure you know, Senator, takes a very long time because our sheriff's office does a very diligent job, and it's a very involved process. So this would give us the opportunity to do something kind of in the middle, where we just are doing the basic fingerprint. We still get, the overview of their criminal activity, but it doesn't take quite as long. We have discussed this with the sheriff's office, and they are supportive. Frankly, their team that does this and does the full background check was a little relieved that we may be moving into a way to decrease their workload, because it is a really involved process to do the full background check. So this would allow us to utilize fingerprinting. Most other counties already have this authority, but we are not included in that part of the statute. So this adds us there.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you, Victoria. And so you're saying that they're supportive. Is there a letter of support from the sheriff's office? And if so, if not, can we get one? And then that way we'll have it all.
Yes, I reached out earlier this week for a letter, and they're working on it. They'll get back to us with one.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I do have Kristen here if you have any more involved questions that I'm not able to answer.
No, I procedurally, I understand what you're doing. I just want to make sure that we're not doing something the shortcut that's going to put anybody, a little more vulnerable. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to answer.
Thank you, Victoria. So is it the will of the committee to put this on the agenda for a vote next week once we get the letter from the sheriff?
Yes, that would be my preference.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, Delegate Simpson. I don't see an issue, so we'll get this rocking and on a quick vote next week. So let's move on to the next item. Speaking of the sheriff's office, this is LR 2634. Senator Fulton, you want to present this?
Sure thing, Mr. Chair. So this legislation is what we kind of visited a couple of years ago, and everybody wanted to kind of push it to later in session, or I'm sorry, into our terms. This bill would actually give the sheriff a raise that he has not had since, in the position has not had since 2006. And it would make it commensurate with the other areas around us, such as Carroll County went up, and their sheriff is commensurate with the pay of a lieutenant colonel in the state police. And that's what this bill does. It's a simple bill. It just gives parity to the service to our community, whoever holds that position, and that we don't have to come back and revisit it because it would be attached to a lieutenant colonel on the state police scale. And that's it in short.
All right. Any discussion from any members? Looks like Delegate Kerr. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The objection that I have to the concept is the same as I had last year, is that the lieutenant colonel answers to somebody. He can be fired. The sheriff answers to no one and can't be fired. Also, by that same logic, I don't know of any other class of elected official that is tied to another salary scale at a different agency. It would be like saying that those of us who are in the House of Delegates are equivalent to a GS-12, and that our salary should be commensurate with our length of service and the GS-12, and when they get a raise, we get a raise. And it's just not the way things work in elected politics, and that's the source of my objection to the idea. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Karen Lewis Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I totally agree that the position of the sheriff should increase. $125,000 is too low for that function. But we ought to put something forward that has a decent chance of passing. I don't think this will. I have a problem with this approach on a number of levels. And I'm going to tell you my perspective from having managed a human resource function. One is, it is about a 99% increase. 97,925 increase. That's a 78% increase. That's pretty unusual. Is that it be at the top of the range. Step 18, that's 222,925. I have never seen anyone start at the top of their range. There's a couple reasons for that. No room for growth. What if we see a new sheriff? They're new in the position. They never start at the top of the range. We haven't seen any job descriptions. I haven't seen the sheriff's job description. I haven't seen the job description of the lieutenant colonel, which is the highest paid position on this sheet of paper that I have. I'm happy to share it with the delegation. It's the state, it's from the State Natural Resource Policy Salary Schedule. I'd like to see 3 counties our size, similar responsibilities, and how our recommendation compares to that. And also, I'd like to see a letter of support from the county executive because it comes out of the county executive budget. I just don't think this recommendation, for a variety of reasons, is ready for prime time. And we need to do a lot more research and analysis.
Delegate Valentine?
Thank you. Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 points I just wanted to touch on. I was really hopeful last year. I believe last year we presented a bill to do just that, some type of a study so we could get more information. And I don't believe that bill pretty much made it anywhere. The second point I'd like to make is the linkage part. They are elected officials, sheriffs specifically, linked to other positions throughout the state in a variety of counties. And I can think of Washington County. I can think of Garrett County. I can think of multiple positions where they're linked to state's attorneys' salaries and state's attorneys that are linked to district court judges' salaries. So the concept is certainly not a new concept, maybe specific to the state police pay scale, that may be, but not in elected officials in general.
Thank you. Delegate Simpson?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wonder, Senator Folden, would you consider like a friendly amendment so that we stop bringing this back over and over again, that since it is the county that decides the salary, that we rewrite this like some of the other counties? And I don't have it with me right now, but I know several of the counties just refer back to the county for deciding the sheriff's salary. And that would take it out of this political arena of who the sheriff is or isn't and things like that. Would you consider having the county council do this as opposed to us? And that's what was in legislation.
Well, I don't know that that would work because the sheriff is a state office, state mandated office. So his position, while it's funded by the county, it is a state office. So
There
I'm
are,
not
if
sure.
you look at, if you go, there are several counties throughout the state that that's exactly what they do. They determine
Okay.
it themselves.
And what counties are those?
Let me pull it up. I know I have a sheet somewhere on of the sheriff's salary, since this is what the 3rd year that we brought this up. So I do have
Yeah.
a spreadsheet of all of
And I want to be clear also for this, and one part that I did forget to incorporate is that this would not take effect until after the next election. So everybody's
well,
clear.
and it couldn't, right? It couldn't, it could not do that, which is fine. But I just know yes, there are other counties that it is related to, like their AG or something else, another elected official. But there is also, there are several counties that just, it's a county function. It's a county, they determine the salary.
Okay, I mean, I'd be open to seeing that. I haven't seen that, so I'm not So I'm not saying that's not the case. I believe what you're saying. So if you could find that, that would be great. I know
And
that the program and how this is designed, like Delegate Valentine said, is something that is not new. It's not, as Delegate Kerr had said, that this is a new concept. It's not. It's just tied to a different body,
okay,
whether it was a
I can
judge
give it to
or
you
the
right
state's
now,
attorney.
and I'll tell you who it is. Allegheny does it. The county decides. Garrett County, Montgomery County, Queen Anne's County, Talbot County, Washington County, Wycomico County. And I can send you the spreadsheet that I have.
Okay. Yeah, that'd
It's
be great.
completely,
I appreciate it.
and we can look into that and see what it is. It's just like,
Okay.
we want to keep doing this.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I look forward to getting that from you. And then to address the one only other variable I think that was hanging out there, which was someone wanted to see the job description. The job descriptions in the state. So you can look it up. The sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of each county. So it's there for everybody to read. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Delegate Fair, go ahead, sir. You might be on mute. All right, we'll come back to you.
My apologies.
Oh, there you go.
I appreciate it. Just a brief comment regarding this bill. Many of us have been in this conversation for a number of years. I was a staffer the first time I was part of this conversation, and now as a state delegate, I'm part of this conversation. I do want the general out there to hear that we had a really great, worked and thoroughly vetted answer to this question in the 2022 legislative session. And I will continue to advocate that we should go back to that effort to reevaluate. Granted, that bill did not pass the Maryland General Assembly that year because of a lot of ill will and ill feelings that had been expressed and had been targeted both from our current sheriff as well as towards our current sheriff. And that we couldn't control that year, but does not negate the fact that there was a bipartisan support group made up of former Senator Huff, former Senator Young, former Delegate Lewis Young, and others, including Mr. Chair, who worked very hard and tirelessly to find a data-based and data-driven answer to this question of how much the sheriff's salary should be raised by. I would advocate and encourage our delegation, if we do not go the county council route, to please go back to that research and that data and put forth a bill that showcases a reasonable and responsible pay raise for the sheriff's salary. Nobody on this call does not agree that the sheriff deserves a pay raise after the upcoming election in 2026. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Senator Reedy, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. It is true. Carol, Hartford, and Charles have gone this route. The lieutenant and there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, and I think everybody's entitled to their opinion. And it's always a little bit hard to have a big jump. But when our sheriff, by the time the raise goes into effect, won't have had the sheriff position will not have had a raise for 8 or 9 years. In this case, it sounds like the sheriff will not have had a raise for the sheriff position for 20 years by the time this would go into effect. And so the jump can look big, but it's like at some point you want to have good people that run for these positions and all that. I will say that there's a question about any other office being tied to something outside of itself. The state's attorney in several counties, including Carroll, is tied to a circuit court judge salary. Not identical; it's a percentage. It's like 90% or something like that. So there is precedent for doing that with elected officials and other bodies. And I think the reason the lieutenant colonel route has gone, the lieutenant route has gone that way is because the responsibilities in the state police structure, while they're not the same as the sheriff, because the sheriff is the head honcho or of the law enforcement for the county, those positions in the state police oversee a tremendous amount of personnel and responsibility, as I understand it. So that I think that's why it's been brought up as sort of a parallel. I certainly want us to get the salary increase done, and I support this bill if we could be assured that something maybe slightly less would pass. But even the thing that's been brought up just now about how we had a great compromise, but it didn't pass either. Now, are there going to be any different conflicts this time around than there were? There's the same person as sheriff. So, I mean, I'm open to, obviously I've got a little small part of the county, and I definitely want the sheriff to be compensated fairly. So I'm supportive of this, but, I think we could, if there are other ideas that we should talk about it, but we definitely want something to pass. We don't want it to be a political football.
Thank you, sir. Delegate Tomlinson, go ahead.
I just wanted to confirm a few things. The sheriff, he is the primary. The sheriff's office is the primary law enforcement in Frederick County, correct?
Yes.
Does the sheriff, does he have a detention center or a correctional facility that he manages?
Yes.
Okay, and there is not a county police department, correct?
Correct.
Okay, this was one of the things that was brought up last year when we did the Carroll County Sheriff's Bill, and not that I think any of our members in this committee, are confused, but I know that when it was discussed in the House Judiciary Committee, a sheriff's raise, I know that I had to remind some folks from counties such as Baltimore City, Baltimore County, probably Montgomery County, how we don't in Frederick there's not a county police department. There's no chief of police, because some counties, I think, look at their sheriffs as in a different light, because their sheriffs have a much lighter responsibility versus counties such as Frederick. So anyhow, I think the sheriff, whoever the sheriff is in the future, I mean, I can't believe that that's what the salary is currently for the sheriff, and based on the responsibilities that come with being the sheriff in a county such as Frederick, a growing county. It's just, we got to get this thing done. It just seems like we're just kicking the can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Senator Quarterman, go ahead.
Thank you. Just real quick, following up on Delegate Simpson, and I think Delegate Valentine touched on it earlier. Yes, in Washington County, we did used to handle it ourselves. You just throw it in part of a salary study, and then again, the delegation doesn't have to revisit it. The county can handle it, or we tied it to the state's attorney's salary, I think a couple years ago. So I think those are two paths you could take that would kind of take some of it out of whatever's the most palatable to the overall delegation. But there's two easy ways that are precedent in the state that we can get out of this. So I'll leave it to obviously the will of the majority of the folks in Frederick County, but in Washington County, yes, we did used to do it one way, but now we do it with the state's attorney's salary.
Thank you. Delegate Miller, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was looking, and I was looking at the 22 bill referenced by Delegate Fair, and it looks like we did try to tie it to this. And again, I wasn't here, but it looks like they tried to tie it to the state police lieutenant. That was struck. And it looks like that it would be a set salary with no raises, no anything else it was like 150,000 from 2025 on. So I definitely think with the precedents that I've seen in other counties, I'm fine with looking at both options, but we did try to do it attached to the lieutenant colonel before. And the compromise does not look like it's a viable compromise to address any kind of salary adjustments going forward. So I don't think that would work, in my opinion. But I'm fine with looking at both of them and coming up with a compromise in between. If we want to look at would a good idea be to have a couple people look at it and bring it back either next week or the next week, so that we can kind of work on a compromise that might pass?
Maybe.
So that we can't go the study route again and then come back, and it would be very difficult. We've tried every which way to get this passed, and so I would like to see us come up with a compromise that is commensurate to what other counties do, one way or the other.
Thank you. Delegate Valentine, is that a legacy hand or you got something else?
No, I have something else, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to go back to the screen in which we were displayed different counties. I know for a fact that in Garrett County, it is not set by the county commissioners. I don't know where the data came from that particular screen. I'm unfamiliar with any county in which it is set by the local county government structure because we passed the Garrett County bill last year. I'm not set on the state police pay scale, but I am really advocating for a tie to some pay scale so we do not have to revisit this every 4 years. As far as the dollar amount, it does look like a substantial raise, but to go back to Senator Folden's point, and we had this in the Carroll discussion last year in my committee, when you look at a decade, 12, 15 years, and you break that down over time and you break it down to 4, 5, 6% per year, it's not quite as big of a pay raise. And those are my comments.
So I'm going to just chime in here. I've been in the legislature for 7 years, and we've been discussing this for 5 years. It is outrageous that I have to sit in Annapolis and vote to give a raise to every single other sheriff in our state with no problems, with no debate, with no issues. It's egregious. We have the largest geographical county in the state. We have the fastest growing population. Our sheriff is one of the few that is a full service sheriff's office that, as was mentioned earlier, not only is the chief law enforcement officer for the largest county, but also is running a jail. We have SRO programs. It's huge. And it's been said, this has nothing to do with the person that's in the office. It wouldn't even kick in into the next election. Every single other government office in our county has gotten a raise. Every single one. County executive, county council, mayors, delegates, senators, register of wills, clerk of the court. It's outrageous. So this group of 15 people need to come up with a workable solution for the position. I don't want to hear it's about the guy or the person there now. It needs to be a workable solution. And as a group, we're going to be voting on something in the next couple of weeks related to this because it's ridiculous. We need to put this to bed and be done with it. This is a very sore subject for me because it is absolutely against local courtesy. The fact that we have to keep banging our heads against the wall on this issue for 5 years in a row. I'm done with it. So I hope that, per Delegate Miller's point, there's some discussions offline and we can come up with a reasonable and workable solution. And by the way, tying it to another position is for the purpose that we don't have to keep voting on it. I mean, that's the purpose of it. It's not to do anything other than as those positions go up, there's an automatic adjustment like most other things, including our state's attorney, that has the same sort of structure. It's tied to I think, a district court judge. So we're looking for efficiency, common sense. Every single one of you has voted on a sheriff's salary increase for another county. And the fact that we can't get it done for our own county, shame on us. We need to move this issue forward. So it doesn't seem like we're going to be voting on this today. I really hope some of you get together and come up with a reasonable solution that you're willing to support so that we can get this done. We've been doing this for 5 years. And next year is an election. So let's get it done. All right. So moving on.
Pippy, I've had my hand up for quite a while.
Go ahead.
Following up on Delegate Miller's suggestion, I'm going to recommend that we put together an ad hoc group of people, 2 senators, 2 delegates, mixed party, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. We do a little bit of research and we come back with a recommendation. It took me about 5 minutes to obtain the document that I referred to earlier. We can do that research in a week, 2 at the most, and get a letter of support from the county exec who has to build this into the budget. And we come back with a bipartisan support or a bipartisan recommendation that would go along with our legislation. And I think we can get it done if we prove it was bipartisan and we used a reasonable, rational approach and we can substantiate our methodology.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And, we look forward to working on that. So, Senator Fulton, are you good for now?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm good for now. I just want to point out, though, that we're saying, I love how the body, members of the body will use bipartisan, moving things together for bipartisan reasons. And that's not how it happens in Annapolis, ironically enough. It's very partisan. And this should never be a partisan issue. This is about public safety and giving the proper compensation to the person who is entrusted with keeping our schools safe, our communities safe, the courthouses safe, the civil processor servers across the county, the jail, and as the chief law enforcement officer, regardless of who the person is in the county. I wish we could get beyond this whole partisan thing because it's being brought up by one person or the other. This is about Frederick County, period. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, noted. Okay, so let's do this because we need to accomplish something today. Let's go to the theater Class C alcohol license. Senator Karen Lewis Wong, you want to give us the update with that?
Yeah, we sent out updated wording to everybody. There was a inappropriate reference in the language that said the president and 2 other officers of the theater shall sign the application for the license. The updated legislation you have amended it to say the manager of the theater or any other official designated by the theater may sign the application for the license.
Okay, is everybody good with that? All right, any discussion on that change? All right, is there a motion on the bill?
I'll move the bill.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, any opposition for the record? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and convert that to a delegation bill on the House and the Senate side, and we'll get that dropped. Thank you, Senator. Let's go on to these letters of support real quick. Victoria Venable, do you want to?
Hold on, Mr. Chair, Jesse. We got one more on the agenda to vote on today.
Yeah, the beer and wine consumption. We're going to come back to that.
Okay, all right. Just making sure you didn't miss it.
Yep, we'll come back to that. Victoria Venable, do you want to go ahead and introduce the corrugated steel letter of support?
Sure. So I know this group is very familiar with this issue, so I'm not going to get too in depth with the problem we're trying to solve. It's very straightforward. We are trying to make buildings safer around this specific building product. But I do want to give you the update that we have been working with a bunch of stakeholders, including the opposition and some of the agencies like the Department of Labor that may be responsible for helping implement this legislation to come up with amendments that appease some of their concerns. With that in mind, I did provide a sample letter that just stays at a very high level around the importance of increasing safety standards as the sponsors of the bill figure out the best language to move forward. With that being said, I just want to say a big thank you to Senator Karen Lewis Young and her office, who have been very instrumental in the discussions around this bill and moving it forward as the Senate sponsor.
So just so we're clear, Victoria, what you're asking for, although this is a statewide bill, because it is it's sourced from the fact that we had a first responder pass away related to this issue in Frederick County, that we're going to kind of break tradition and just do a letter of support for this statewide bill because of how important it is for Frederick, as we did last year. And you're just asking for an updated letter. Is that correct?
Yep, that's exactly it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any discussion on that from any of the group? All right. Is there a motion to do a letter of support as we did last year for this bill from the delegation?
Move approval for letter support.
Okay, second.
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Any opposition for the record? All right, Victoria, there you go. Just get that over to Andrew and Senator Folden, and we'll get that signed and get that sent to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right. Delegate Kerr, do you want to introduce the next letter of discussion for Clover Hill baseball?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
We received a request from Clover Hill Baseball to have the fees waived for the Whittier elementary baseball fields for the upcoming baseball season, the spring and fall 2025 baseball seasons. The Clover Hill baseball organization has been oversubscribed. They've had to turn kids away or add more kids to a team that gives kids less of an opportunity to play. The fields at Whittier Elementary are in disrepair. So what Clover Hill Baseball is proposing is that if we waive the rental fees for a year, they will rehab and refurbish the fields, which means leveling the fields and rebuilding the pitcher's mound. It seems like the county's probably coming out ahead on that deal, considering the amount of expense that it takes to refurbish a baseball field.
So, and is this, and real quick, so is Kevin, are you online here?
Yes, I am.
Kevin, if you don't mind, just give us a very brief overview. Is this for the city or the county?
This is for the city. So this is part of the waiver of fees application. And as far as I know, the Whittier field fall under the Parks and Rec department.
Of the city of Frederick?
Yes.
Okay, so they're proposing that they basically are asking for just a letter of support, because you're making an application on behalf of the baseball league saying that, hey, we'll agree to rehab all these fields, and in exchange the city would waive some fees. And they just said, hey, if you have letters of support, present those, and that's what you're seeking today. Is that correct?
That's correct. So as part of the waiver of fees application, they request 3 letters of support from leaders in the community. So this is one of those letters. We're also receiving letters from a number of other people within our program who are active in either the neighborhood, the school system, or live in the Whittier community directly adjacent to the fields, so that they can get a broad perspective on the support that we have for these renovations.
Okay. Senator Karen Lewis Young, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about a letter of support. I just don't think this is within our purview. Whittier, this is between Whittier and Frederick County Public Schools and Clover Hill. The HOA should negotiate with the city. I don't think this is an area we want to get into. It will set a very dangerous precedent. I
Okay.
think it's a lovely idea, but I really don't think this is within our jurisdiction.
Okay. Delegate Miller, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused because is this city Parks and Rec or county? Because I heard 2 different things.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I believe this is part of the what says the Parks and Recreation and Parks Commission. So I was under the understanding that it was city, since Whittier is part of Frederick City.
Okay, the letter says Frederick County Parks and Rec. And then second is, are we talking about Whittier, the fields that belong to the school, or is there another park or something like that there?
So the Whittier baseball fields are part of the Parks and Recreation facilities, but they are adjacent to Whittier Elementary School.
Are they adjacent to Whittier Elementary School, or so a lot of our school systems are paired with Parks and Rec, where we have Parks and Rec gyms and things like that. So is the field owned by is it owned by the school, or is it owned by the park? Is it just adjacent? Like up at Middletown, we have the Middletown Park that's adjacent to that touches the school boundary and it's not owned or anything by the school. Which situation are we talking about?
That's my understanding, is that it is not part of FCPS. It is not run or owned by Whittier Elementary School, that this is a Parks and Recreation facility.
Okay. All right. Yeah. If we can get some clarifying language, I'm not I'm not opposed to a letter of support. If it does involve the school system, that is a little bit of a different situation that will, as Senator Lewis Young said, set some precedent, which again, I'm not opposed to doing in-kind services for reduction of fees. We've done them in other places like Urbana for the turf fields and things like that. So I'm not opposed to it, but I would like some clarification where we're really delineating that because the letter doesn't seem to reflect what I'm being told.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
if I could chime in, as I understand it, the fields are owned by the city, right, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so there might be an error with the letter, it sounds like, but the fields are owned by the city, and there is already a relationship between the city and the league, and the league is asking the city if they would waive the fees in exchange for spending a bunch of money to rehab the field. And the city is open to that. They're just asking for you to come up with some letters of support from leaders in the community. Is that correct?
Yes. So we had a number of email exchanges with the members of the Parks and Recreation Department, trying to negotiate something that would work out for everybody's benefit, both the league and the city, and that was fair to everybody. And so one of their suggestions was to fill out this waiver of fees application, and then part of that application is to get the letters of support from the community.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Delegate Fair, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just suggest that we, because that letter is addressed to the wrong department and it is also at the wrong address, because that is a county property that it's being sent to. I would suggest that we take this conversation offline for at least a week to discuss this a little further. It sounds like a very laudable goal, and certainly something that I would personally support in a moment's notice. But I think the senator and Senator Lewis Young and Delegate Miller have both expressed some concerns that I wasn't thinking about. And literally the second that it was mentioned that it sets a precedence, I started thinking of the hundreds of nonprofits through Frederick County that could then use this same logic to reach out to our delegation seeking for a formal letter of recognition and support for similar projects. And it certainly would set us up for having that discussion more and more often. So we just want to go in, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm saying we want to go in clear-eyed of the precedent that we are setting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, look, for the record, that we do that every year for all sorts of nonprofits that come to us for money and other things. And this group is not asking for money from us. They're not asking for anything other than just support the concept. But point noted. Justin or Senator Reedy, is that your hand up? Might be a legacy hand. Okay. All right. So Kevin, if you don't mind, get with. Okay, Justin, are you good?
Yeah, I have my hand up also.
Okay, go ahead.
I received some clarification. It's the city who controls the field time, but the property is controlled by the school. So I would want to see a letter of support from both. I think we need to be consistent in our approach. If we're asking for a letter of support from the sheriff on the background check bill, then in other bills that we move forward or other issues where we do a letter of support, we should have the same criteria.
Okay. All right, Delegate Miller for the last bite at the apple.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, that does change things a little bit. So I certainly want to hear from the school system. And I would say it's a good idea to do this change in in-kind services. And again, in the school system, we have done it before. There are fields, soccer fields that my kids have played on in the past, things like that, that are in disrepair, that could be, it could be an advantage. But again, if we're allowing this for one group, it will mean that they would need to allow it for other groups. So, we do need to be aware of that, and how it's done should be consistent.
Okay. All right, so Kevin, what we'll do is Andrew will reach out to you. We'll clarify that letter, get some additional info, and we'll get it back on the agenda for next week.
Okay, wonderful. Sounds good. So just so you're aware, we do have a deadline to get the letters to the Parks and Recreation Department by January 31st. So
Okay,
if we could work together ahead of time so that we can meet that deadline, then that would be appreciated.
perfect. Yeah, and that looks like that's Friday. So we have a narrow window, but we'll get you something.
Certainly. I appreciate the help. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, for the last item on the agenda is the beer and wine consumption permit revisions. Just to kind of set the tone for this, the liquor board had a public hearing and discussed revising the beer and wine consumption permit. The delegation then met with the liquor board to go over those changes. And then as I understand, there was an additional change made and that was sent to the delegation last week. And so maybe if we could just briefly talk about that, and we can go from there. So I don't know who's here from the liquor board. Is that Joan or Dawn?
I'm here for the liquor board.
Is that Dawn?
Yes,
Oh,
sorry.
okay. All right. So I know this is another bill that we've been working on for a long time. We've made a bunch of changes to this area. I noticed something else in the language that I wasn't sure if that was what we were trying to accomplish. I hate to make a mountain out of a molehill with this thing. Is just and I'll stop here in a minute. Just to remind everyone, I think the purpose of having a bill on this issue this year was because we had certain Class A stores that when they did wine tastings at their location, they realized that they weren't allowed to have, let's say, 6 1-ounce tastings of wine or 2 3-ounce tastings of wine, that the increments of wine was very rigid. And so this was supposed to be a corrective bill to essentially allow them to offer any combination of beer, wine, and liquor as long as it didn't exceed a full drink. But what has transpired between those conversations and today is that there appears to be also an effort to delete the option of having a single 12-ounce beer, a single 6-ounce of wine, and maybe even a mixed drink as a tasting. And so at the end of the day, the delegation is going to have to decide what they want to do and what they don't want to do. Is that about fair, Don?
That is correct. And the way it was first written, we thought was a pretty good, like you say, bite at the apple that kept it in a total combination of the 6 ounces for the beer, for the wine, so that people could have a variance of tasting. And it limited them from carrying around a 12-ounce. Then I don't know where the revision came from, but then a 12-ounce was out on the agenda from this last round, got added back in. So I don't know where that adjustment came from, but originally the way it was written, I thought it was written beautifully. And then, we also got some input from our board chair who was looking at other counties and how they do it as well. So I'll let the delegation have that discussion.
Okay. Senator Karen Lewis Young, go ahead.
Sorry, that was a legacy.
Okay. Delegate Fair, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to state that I really appreciate the hard work, Mr. Chair, that you've taken on with building out this bill. I know it's been a frustrating conversation at times as we've been trying to figure out all the various components. I'm personally very comfortable with this. Dawn, I did want to clarify that on page 2, line 16, an individual may taste a single beer at 12 ounces or a single glass at 6 ounces, but the 6-ounce authority really kind of ties in when we're doing a tasting of of a combination of those. But I know a conversation we were having on the floor yesterday was about whether or not the individual can grab a single 12-ounce tasting of a beer. Is that still the case that they can do that according to this language?
The updated language that I received put the 12 ounces back in. The previous language made it just 6 ounces across the board for no matter what combination. If you had 3 of beer, 3 of wine, it truly was a tasting. Again, I don't know where the 12 ounces got added back in. That's not something that we, put an initiative on. The original written one that had the 6 ounces seemed to be workable. And we have surveyed our everyone has a tasting endorsement. 58 people of our 114 establishments that are convenience stores, packaged good. We did a survey, and I sent that survey along where every single person except for one said no, they do not offer a 12-ounce beer. And those who initially, and I know it's frustrating for Delegate Pippy, because the 2 people who solicited him years ago to put that 12-ounce in, they don't even do it. So it does become frustrating when you get solicited, and I say solicited, but approached to say, hey, Delegate Pippy or someone from the delegation, we need this, we need this, we need this. And then they don't use it. And we've had a lot of people come back to us and just say that our tasting menu was just too confusing. Could we please simplify it?
So I apologize. I was our packet that we were given yesterday included one that is different than the one that's on the screen right now for the delegation. So I'm looking at a different.
Yeah, and just for clarification, so I requested a change for comparison. We had, if everyone remembers, we met with the liquor board and we discussed at length the changes for the tasting, but we never discussed removing the single serving of 12 ounce. And so, matter of fact, at the last delegation meeting last week, Delegate Kerr also caught that there was a change. And so I wanted the delegation to see the difference. So right now, current law is that they're permitted to have a single serving of 12 ounce. Really, the way to look at this is you can have no more than a drink, whether that's a beer, a wine, or liquor. What we wanted to also say was that you could break that up in any combination you want as long as it doesn't exceed a full drink. And so the lingering question for the delegation is going to be, does the delegation want people that come in to have the option of having any full drink or below in any combination, as long as it doesn't exceed a drink? So you could come in and have a beer, or you could have any, 4 3-ounce things of beer, or 3 4-ounce things of beer, but you can't have more than 1 drink. Or wine, you could have 6 ounces of wine, or you could have 3 2-ounce things of wine, or 2 3-ounce things of wine, as long as it doesn't exceed. It's up to the delegation. It's the problem is when we overcomplicate things, the bill drafters lose their minds, and we end up getting a product that doesn't make sense. And that's what we keep running into every year, because the spirit of the bill originally was that people could have wine tastings. You could go into your favorite shop and they could provide a couple different wine tastings. The current law doesn't even permit that. And so we were hoping to fix that. But now, as presented originally from Dawn, there's also a different change to remove the 12-ounce beer piece, which was already existing law. So, Delegate Miller, do you want to go ahead, please?
So a couple things as I was looking at this. One is I had asked before, and Senator Fulton reminded me that I had asked about like what other counties do. And so I reached out to Joan and Dawn, and they did send that to me. And Dawn, if you could send that to the chair and the vice chair so that they can give that to all the members. There are a couple different versions, but it doesn't seem like anyone allows for a single serving to be poured as part of a tasting. And you'll see that we took out consume and put taste. So they have the option, liquor stores or wine and beer stores have the option of selling a single serving of beer, or a single can of beer if they would like to, or a small bottle of wine if they would like to. That's not a tasting. A tasting is multiple either smaller servings to be able to taste and try different types of beer. So that's one of my concerns. So we have other draft language that is very good from other counties. Washington County does not allow for a full 12 ounce. Carroll County lets the board have a little bit more authority to sets it, so we would not be coming here all the time to do that. The other thing that's a little concerning with it being a tasting, so if there's a lot of breweries so that do holiday menus, like different types of holiday. You have cranberry or eggnog and all different kinds of beer. So if I go in and I want to try a beer and I'm given a 12-ounce beer and I try it and I don't like it, then what? Because it's not portioned out, it's not sectioned out. So then are they allowed to give me another one? So there's that. And then beer, as the language is written, I still think the language is a little confusing and not ready for what we, I think Senator Lewis Young said prime time, not ready for prime time, because it doesn't address the whole 12 ounces of beer. So it seems to incentivize getting a single beer at 12 ounces versus if you do have multiple tastings, it's not to exceed 6 ounces. So I think we could clarify some of the language better, and then it will be up to the delegation to see if they want to leave in the whole single serve part or just have it be broken up. And it seems like from the survey that I saw, no one really does a whole full beer. And I don't think anyone was asking to do a whole full beer. So I would prefer just
Well,
breaking it up into single
they
serve.
were,
Other
and that's
counties.
why we voted. So like the existing law, by the way, you voted for it last year.
And I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying this is how I'm looking at it now. There are no other county does this as far as having a full single ounces. That's the information I have now. And we certainly have comparisons that we can draw language from that is very good to simplify it.
All right, Delegate Kerr, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm all for simplicity, and that would be to have one standard drink, which is, I think, 14 grams of alcohol, some measurement, and any combination thereof. And I also think it's important to point out that we're talking about maximums, not minimums. No one is saying that they have to provide a full 6 ounces of wine, a full 12 ounces of beer. That's the highest they can go. So just in order to simplify things, I think we go with one standard drink and maybe put in the 14 grams of alcohol. Leave it somebody else's responsibility to do that calculation.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, that's kind of the challenge is part of this is, I think part of this is the drafting, to be honest with you, because even the current draft, I looked at it this morning, and it doesn't even appear to give you the option to break up the 12 ounces of beer into servings, like to break it up into, 3-4 ounce tastings. It does it for the other types of alcohol, but it doesn't appear to do it for the beer. So that wouldn't work as it sits alone anyway. So, all right. So Don, it looks like we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board on this, and I'll, the delegation will keep talking about it, and we'll figure out what everybody wants to do. And Delegate Curry, you got something else?
Yeah, one more thing. Specifying how it's broken up, can't we just take care of that in regulation rather than legislation?
And
Probably.
that's what's written, how it's written in Carroll County and in Garrett County as well. And so if that's the direction the delegation would like to go, it would then punt the ball per se back to each board of how they want to regulate that. And we wouldn't have this conversation over and over again. So I do appreciate that is being considered. And Chair Pippy, I did just forward out all the counties for Maryland for you to distribute to the rest of the delegation.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll have some discussions offline, and we'll keep everybody posted, and I'll reach out and Delegate Miller and Kerr and everybody, and we'll we'll work this out because we're gonna, we'll get this fixed. So, all right, anything else, Dawn? Are you good for now? You're good. All right. I think that is the end of our agenda. Does any members have any comments for the good of the order before we adjourn? Let's see. Delegate Boucher, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Very quickly, I just wanted to go back to the letter to the park. Since the offer was to waive the rental fees for the services to upgrade the park, we didn't see any numbers whatsoever. And I think when they come back with that, they really should let us know what the rental fees are, the quantity compared to the upgrades. Because within the midst of our fiscal crisis, I think that was one of the most important parts of that discussion that was missed. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. Delegate Fair, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to drive back that I really would not want to push the brakes on this sheriff's salary discussion. If we're going to build an ad hoc group, Mr. Chair, I would assume that you would be the one appointing those members. I don't know if we want to handle that now or have that conversation offline, but I think it's a good opportunity for us to get that handled real quick.
Okay. Senator Lewis, go ahead.
I have already reached out while we're discussing this issue to the county exec, asking for some research, and to the legislative chair in Mako to provide some competitive research that I can offer. I would, as I said before, I'm willing to do some research. I'd like to pull together an ad hoc group that includes Senator Folden and perhaps Delegate Simpson, and either Fair or Kerr, either one of you. And after I get the research, we'll discuss it and make a recommendation.
Is it just the three of you?
No, it should be 4, 2 delegates, 2 senators. I recommended Folden myself since I've already reached out for some research. Simpson, because she's knowledgeable on these issues, and either Fair or Kerr, your choice. Those are my recommendations.
So what I'll do, let me I'm going to reach out to Senator Folden, and we'll send an email out, and we'll put a bipartisan group together to come up with some recommendations to present to the delegation by next week. So we'll send that out shortly today. Let me just kick that around, and but point taken. So okay, all right. Anything else for the good of the order? Delegate Valentine, go ahead, sir.
Just one quick comment, Mr. Chair. If we're going to do 2 senators and 2 delegates, and we do bipartisan, should it not be two of both party?
Well, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. No, it'll be balanced. So
okay, thank you.
Point.
All right. Well, good. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Well, I hope everyone has a safe weekend. Hopefully it's supposed to warm up a bit. We got a big football game with the Commanders, and we'll see everyone next week. All right. Motion adjourned.